So, this morning, before I went to work, something caught my eye on Twitter. And it was something that Josh Sonic, a fellow Sonic fan and Twitter follower of mine and vice versa, had brought up. Now, Josh likes to point out certain, comic book pages, moments, art, kind of give the spotlight to some established artists on the Sonic book, like Tracy Yarlin, Stephen Butler, you name it. And one of the things he talked about today, sorry about that, someone's driving a truck that's really loud. But one of the things he talked about today was the Mecha Sally arc, and mostly the issue in which the freedom fighters, encounter Sally after not only her robotization, but her weaponization by Robotnik, or Eggman, if you will. And, he brought up that this was a sad, dark time in the story for the characters. And, a lot of fans, commented and everything. Some saying that they liked the story, they were just upset it wasn't resolved. They didn't get a proper conclusion. And some kind of voiced the same thing as me. Some felt that it was not necessary. It was, it was just something that they shouldn't have gone with in the first place. They shouldn't have gone in the direction they did. But one person brought up something at the end, or not at the end, but during, those comments being, put up on Twitter. One person brought up, the fact that a lot of fans would use what Ian Flynn did to Sally here as justification of the fact that he never liked Sally. He never cared for the character, yet he comes out and contraries that belief by saying he always was a fan of the character, he always did care about the character, but yet fans will counteract him, or contrary him, I should say, and point out, well, if you truly cared about the character, why did you have her sacrifice herself to robotization? Why did you allow Eggman to weaponize her? And for some odd reason, you use a power ring, of all things, to prevent her from getting her free will back. Why did you do all this? And it does bring up a very valid two-part question. Is Ian Flynn telling the truth? Is Ian Flynn a true fan of Sally? Or does he not like the character and he's just saying he likes Sally to please the masses? This is a good two-part question of whether or not, yes, he is a fan, or no, he isn't. And he's just playing up the masses to cover his own rear. Now, let's take a look. Maybe at basically at 3.5 minutes here. Let's take a look at, the first part of this two-part question. Is he a fan? Does he like Sally? And a lot of fans would say he does. Some fans would point out, like myself, that the evidence that shows he likes the character is the fact that when he came on board, he started planting the seeds to regrow the relationship between Sonic and Sally. And that one of the first seeds that he planted to make that happen was to redeem Sally, back into who she was, before he came, before he came on board. Basically, he wanted to redeem her. Sorry about that, but like I said, some would point out, like myself, that, he started to plant the seeds of regrowing the relationship between Sonic and Sally upon the first issue he came on board for as the new official head writer. And that one of those seeds he planted to help make that happen was to redeem Sally into who she originally was, positioned as, personality-wise, outside of what Ken and Carl had done beforehand. In other words, he wanted to erase what some people would consider was the stank of the character traits and persona that Sally had been given under the pen of penders and bowlers. And I will give a point there. I will give an agreement there that yes, by having him, basically start to, rectify and correct, some changes that a lot of people would agree were not necessary persona-wise for a lot of the characters, it made a lot of sense. It made a lot of sense, and it did prove that he was a fan of the character, because he wouldn't have gone to those lengths if he wasn't a fan. Another example, some fans would point out, another example would be the 175th to 177 trilogy. Where one of the scenes in the final issue of the three-parter is Sally asking Bunny for a favor, and we see that favor is for her to basically give Sally a new hairstyle, or basically kind of give Sally her old hairstyle back, to basically confirm that she, as she puts it herself, is back to her old self again. Or at least she's, basically taking the first steps to being her first, being her old self again, and having her original due back, is one way of that happening, if you catch my drift. So yes, I will agree that there's another point in his favor that shows he is a fan. But then you get to basically the Iron Dominion arc. And the Iron Dominion arc is where it really seemed like maybe he wasn't truly a fan of the Sonic and Sally relationship, because what he had done is that even though he was showing hints, here and there, he was planting the seeds more so in every issue he wrote, going forward, that when we got to the Iron Dominion arc, it seemed that he was doing anything but, because it seemed like he wanted to be more focused on developing a Sally Monkey Con, or as he calls them, Ken Con relationship instead. But as a lot of folks, including myself, pointed out, this was a relationship, and I think even Ian Flynn knew this for a fact, that this was just a temporary relationship meant for the story only. That's all it was. It was meant for the story only, because, Ian, I think, realized that if he wanted to go in that direction on a permanent basis, that it would not be well received, that fans would be upset, they'd be critical, they'd be writing into Sega, they'd be writing into Archie, his reputation would be shot. But he had enough sense to realize, well, if I want to basically get this relationship between Sonic and Sally back off the ground, then I need to put something into this story that's going to help it grow, or help it get to that level. And at the end, even though Sally and Con kissed, at the end, what did we see? What did we see occur? We saw Sally and Sonic hand in hand, and Sally kind of having like loving, a little bit of, that kind of like that loving look in her eye of, trying to start of willing this time, very willing to want to retry again. Because as they both basically said, it'll be just like old times. And, with that moment there at the end of the epilogue issue of the, I think it was 212 or 211, of the Iron Dominion arc, I will give a point to Ian there, because that is a true fan's way of saying, hey, I want to get things back to the status quo. I want to get things back to where it was simplified and not complex. And for a while he was doing that, and every issue that followed the Iron Dominion arc had hints of Sally and Sonic's relationship of being more than just friends, or BFFs, if you will, you know, developing even more and more, issue after issue, month after month, until finally we got to 222. And 222 was the issue we had been waiting for. And ironically, it was nearly 100 issues later from 123, which was the last time they got together. The only difference was, unlike 123, it wasn't all, Twilight, teen drama, high school crush, love, whatever kind of situation. This was a natural progression. And I'll give Ian credit there. It was a natural progression. And, you could see it in every issue. Like I said, when he started, as the head writer, planting the seeds to, after, to even through, some of the Iron Dominion arc with Sally being with Monkey Con and stuff like that. And then even afterwards, with the issues leading up to it. It was nearly a year's build after the Iron Dominions arc to get to the point that we got. And I'm just checking my time there. And a lot of people, sorry about that again, but like I say, and a lot of people loved it. A lot of people enjoyed the fact that he took his time, even from when he first began, to that portion, to those 10 issues, that near year-long, run of issues after the Iron Dominion arc. People enjoyed the fact that he was taking his time to get to that point, to get to that moment. Because it became a natural progression in doing so. And not only was it a natural progression, if you will, but the moments felt very, relatable when you're going on a date, especially with someone you've been in an on and off deal for a while. Every moment and scene in there felt very relatable and, well, real in a sense. Even the conversation at the end when they were at the chow pool, if you will, the ring pool, if you will, where they were talking, playing around with each other, joking around with each other, flirtatiously teasing each other about, about things like, Sally saying, oh, so if I stay with Monkey Kong, that wouldn't upset you, and Sonic, and she's doing it playfully, and, with a playful shove, and Sonic, seeing that she's being playful, it allows him to open up and admit, yeah, okay, maybe I was a little jealous. But then Sonic brings up the fact that, hey, you were the same way with Mina and Fiona, which, just like Sonic, Sally sees Sonic being genuine and playful and flirtatious when he says it. And she opens up and admits, yeah, that I was jealous too. Because here's the thing, when you have a moment like that, in these kind of stories, where you have a couple get back together, or try one more time, but this time it feels more natural, like now they've taken the right necessary steps to make it, a reality, to where they both understand, okay, look, maybe, me being with, this girl, in Sonic's case, or that girl, maybe it wasn't the best idea because, the girl I've always been with, you, still had a thing for me. And Sally's the same way. Like, Sally basically acknowledging, oh, if I stayed with Monkey Kong, you wouldn't have been jealous. Sally in her own way is saying, hey, I know that being around Ken, being around Ken and acting the way I did, you were jealous because he was taking up your spot, or basically he was intruding on your territory, if you know what I mean. So I like the idea that Ian went that route. I like the idea that he went that route to naturally bring them back together. However, unfortunately, it wouldn't last forever, if you catch my drift. And the reason it wouldn't last forever, as we approach 15 minutes on this video, hopefully the battery doesn't die, but right here at 15 minutes, this is where we talk about why fans believe he never liked Sally. You see, some fans believe that, he built up, and, even though they were happy about this, some look back on it now and they believe that the only reason he built up Sonic and Sally to be back together was to break them apart once again. And that happened with 225. And it wasn't, something on the lines of 134, no. It was mainly the fact that, both going into the Death Egg to try to shut it down, and before, Eggman launched the first Sonic, the first Genesis wave, Super Genesis wave, whatever. And in the process, what happens? One of the most unexpected moments. Sally gets gunned down. She gets gunned down by a turret gun. And Ian Flynn's explanation of what happened to Sally as a result when she went down that hallway before the Genesis wave hit, that his explanation, which again makes fans believe that he never truly liked the character and he only built both of them back up to be back together just to break them apart to really stick it to the fans. Ian's answer to what happened to Sally when she got shot down by that, or gunned down in that hallway, was that the Torrent gun had turned her body into the equivalent of Swiss cheese. Yeah, Ian said that. He said basically that, her being gunned down in that hallway at the end of 225 was the equivalent of her being turned into Swiss cheese. And nobody liked it. Nobody did. Now, true, he brought her back for the Sonic Genesis story arc 4-part miniseries that came about that was part in continuity of the, as of the result of the Genesis wave and everything. Because here's the thing, in that story, at first they didn't recognize each other, but they got to know each other and notice an attraction between each other. But what's crazy, and this is where it's kind of back and forth, Ian chose Sally and Sonic to be the ones that would remember the other world. Now, some would say and point out that is proof he still liked the character and he still supported the relationship. And that's true. That's true because, again, at the end of the Genesis Wave deal, at the end of the Sonic Genesis story, both of them fully remembered the truth. They both fully remembered, the true existence and everything. But unfortunately, once again, even though Sonic was able to restore reality, and even though Sally along with him were able to remember the old world, unfortunately 230's ending happened, and that really got under a lot of people's skin, including my own. I mean, a lot of us will acknowledge that what Sally did was a great moment. It was a great character developing moment. It was basically something that brought her full circle. From the way she was portrayed under the pin writing of penders and bowlers to what she had become to that point. So we agree it did bring her full circle in redemption. It's just the way it was handled was not very good. I mean, I've gone on record recently and said that you could have gone with this two ways. You could have gone with this two ways. You could have had Sally be partially roboticized like Bunny, but mainly instead of, having arms and legs roboticized, you could have half her body roboticized as a result. And you could tell a story like that. You could have her and Nicole end up being fused together as a result temporarily, but then as they're escaping, thanks to Sonic and Tails, you see this robotic arm stick out of the wreckage, just like we would see at the end of 230, and we see basically as a result a robotic version, not a roboticized version, but a robotic version of the fused version of the fused form of Nicole and Sally popping up. Or if you wanted to go the Mecha Sally route, I should say, just like I just mentioned, and I mentioned it before, they could have said, hey, let's have Sally survive this. She gets rescued by the others. She ends up in a coma temporarily. But as a result, the global roboticizer creates a robotic version of her, and you can go that route. You can go that route, and it makes more sense. It makes more logical sense to do so. But he didn't do that. He didn't do that. And to me, that would have basically kind of, when you think about it, kind of really downplayed any suspicion of whether or not he liked Sally, or whether or not he hated Sally, or he liked her. Because of the fact that if he would have done something like that, it would have shown he still cared about the character, but that didn't happen. Instead, Sally, again, has a moment, full circle redemption, but as a result, she ends up being roboticized, and you think, okay, she's roboticized, we've been there, done that, it'll only be a temporary thing, right? She'll stay in this roboticized form, it won't take long for them to capture her, get her back, at least give her back her free will, and then over time get her back to normal, right? And that would be the more logical, sensible solution, right? And would basically take less, what's the word I'm looking for? Less suspicion off Ian of not liking the character. But did that happen? No. Instead, Ian kept her roboticized, and even went to that next level by having Eggman at the end of 231, the main page of the main story of 231, hold a blowtorch to her face, and basically, as some people suspect, and when you really think about it, there is kind of no arguing about it, even though I still want to feel the other way, where he just welded on weaponized armor onto her already roboticized body, that instead, Eggman using a blowtorch, as basically some fans would suspect, Ian essentially had Eggman gut Sally and rebuild her into the weaponized version. And and here's the thing. If he had not done that, like I said, and gone the route that I just mentioned, it would have thrown off less suspicion, just like the other things that I mentioned. But he didn't. He kept her roboticized, and he went a direction to where fans suspect that in story, Eggman used a blowtorch to take Sally apart, gut her, and rebuild her into Mecha, into the weaponized version of Mecha Sally. And, that was it. And by doing so, it put more suspicion, if not strong suspicion, if not flat out confirmation in the eyes of a lot of fans, that this guy never cared about Sally. And that the only reason he built her and Sonic's relationship back up, and built her up back up as a character period, was just to stab everybody in the back and do what he did. But that's not the only thing that makes him suspicious about it. That's not the only thing that makes him suspicious about it, because the other thing that makes him suspicious is when he does the soft retcon reboot. After that goes through, everybody's thinking, okay, Sonic and Sally, Sally's back, new design, we knew it was coming, and everything. It was previewed at one of the Comic Cons, I think, San Diego Comic Con. Everybody's thinking, oh, she's back, she's going to be back, that's cool. She's going to be with Sonic again, there'll be an item, right? Nope. Instead, he decides to, take this new revised version of Sally, give a bit of a personality quirk to where basically the humor of her is that she's not a good cook, if you will. She's not really a good cook, per se. But on top of that, he decides to add another personality quirk to her, that instead of her being, attracted to someone like Sonic and being straight, that instead she is now bisexual. In other words, she can be attracted not just to males, but to also females. And this is strongly suggested for the latter when as I mentioned before, recently in a video, he came out on one of his podcasts and acknowledged how blatant it was that, him and his wife, Leah Baker, were able to get away with what they did when it came to Spark of Life. And basically the little hints and stuff that they dropped about the relationship between Sally and Nicole being more than just a BFF friendship, and that it could be potentially something more. Just the way they were interacting with each other, in the 4-part Spark of Life Sonic Universe story, and even in the main series as well. And he even said that he would rather prefer those two as an item more so than anything else. And that did really, again, throw some suspicion, his way. Hold on for a sec. Like I said, it threw more suspicion his way that he never was a fan of Sally as a character, but also never a fan of Sonic and Sally's relationship. If he'd rather prefer her being bisexual and mostly having a lesbian LGBTQ relationship with Nicole. Now, some might say, well, we don't know if that's true. He might have been ready to put them together. Again, had the comic continued. That's a good opinion. That's a good thought, and a possibility that could have happened. But unfortunately, Ian said that Ian said himself in a podcast that he was done with the romance crap. He was really done, with a few exceptions like Bunny and Antoine, and like I said, teasing the whole Nicole Sally deal. He was done. He was done with it. And he wanted nothing more to do with it, period. He wanted nothing more to do with it, period. But again, when you look at all these things that I just mentioned, it does, make you wonder, on this side of the things, if there's more evidence here in this second part of the video that shows he never really was a fan, and he was more of a hater in the eyes of a lot of folks. In conclusion, we may never know, because someone could ask Ian Flynn in a question on his Bumblecast Q&A, and he'll give the same answer that he always was a fan of Sally, that he champions the Rally for Sally deal, and he supports Sally probably getting a figure with first 4 figures and stuff. He'll say the things people will want to hear, but at the end of the day, he may never really give us a straight answer. Or in the eyes of a lot of folks, he may never give a straight answer. Because, some feel that if he truly liked Sally, he wouldn't have done what he did. If he truly was a fan of Sally, he wouldn't have, built up her character to give her moment, which was a great moment, but then, go down the path he did. Or that he wouldn't have teased and gave us the moment between Sally and Sonic that we've been waiting for so long, just to take it away from us and never go back to it. It's just one of those, situations of we may never know the answer. If you catch my drift, we may never know the answer. But, maybe that's for the best. Maybe that's for the best, because when you think about it, sooner or later, Ian Flynn or someone close to the situation is going to come out and give us the truth. They're going to give us the answer. And hopefully it'll be an answer we're wanting. I mean, I got in contact with Ben Bates, and he told me one of the plans was to go to 300 with this entire Mecha Sally deal. Well, at least that was the original plan. And when I revealed that to a lot of folks, and folks found out on social media themselves from Ben, the reaction was one of surprise, because they couldn't believe what they were hearing or reading. But again, we may never know the answer. My thought is this: my thought is this. My thought is this. To give the guy the benefit of the doubt, I do believe he was, and still somewhat is, a fan of Sally. The only reasoning, though, that he did all these things that kind of shows that maybe he's not as big of a fan and supporter as he lets on, is because he's trying to please the people that are truly running the show. And that would be Sega. Not Archie, not IDW, Sega. And if Sega's okay with characters like Sally and Bunny, or in case of IDW, Jewel and Belle and Tangle and Whisper, you know, if he's okay with them being, if they're okay with them being around, on the condition that the comics, you know, focus more on the game aspect of the series, then, you know, I guess that's a good compromise in the end, if you will. I guess it's a good compromise in the end, but still, it's just, you know, when you want to please the people that are running the things over what the fans want, sometimes that's a good deal. That's a good compromise if they allow you to have the characters and do certain things with them. You know, that's cool and everything. That's a good compromise. But it's also a detriment because you're basically alienating your fellow fans by not listening to them and giving them what they want. It's kind of like with wrestling. A lot of fans feel that WWE should give the fans what they want and say, screw, you know, our sponsors. Screw, you know, you know, the stock market and all that. You know, screw, you know, public relations and all that. You know, that, you know, screw you guys, we're going to listen to our fans. It's very similar to that in many aspects, but, you know, again, like I said, we may never get a straight answer until maybe, like I said, someone close to Ian throughout all this comes out and gives us somewhat of an answer that's the closest we're going to get. But what do you guys think about this? Do you think Ian was a fan, or do you think he wasn't a fan? What are your thoughts? Comment below, live chat during the premiere, like the video. Check out the Teespring store. Check me out at BW Rose's Discussions, all your favorite audio podcast locations except for Pandora. Also check me out at deviantheart.com/BVW1979, patreon.com/BWRoses. Also check me out at VENMO at BW Roses, and at VENMO at Brian-Walmart-2, and at Cash App at BW Roses98. But guys, let me know what your thoughts are. And I am out. Super chats and super stickers are open. It would be appreciated during the live chat of this premiere.